Have you ever met a woman who didn't say much, but the entire room shifted when she walked in? Not because of her outfit, not because of her smile, not because she needed attention, but because she didn't. There was something in her stillness that spoke louder than any words. Something that said, "I no longer chase validation. I've already come home to myself." That is true magnetism. And it has nothing to do with youth, with beauty, with status. It's not loud. It's not flashy. It's not even visible at first glance. It's a quiet revolution, the kind that begins inside. Because there comes a moment in a woman's life when she realizes no amount of admiration can fill the emptiness left by self-abandonment. So she stops performing. She stops pleasing. She turns inward, not to escape, but to remember. She peels off the roles she was told to wear: the obedient daughter, the perfect partner, the selfless friend. One by one, she sheds the masks until what's left is raw, is real, is radiant. This isn't a glow you can fake. It's the kind that rises after you've walked through your own darkness and didn't give up. She has scars, yes, but now they shimmer like truth, like proof, like poetry etched into skin. She has been to the edge and didn't lose herself there. That's what makes her magnetic. Not her perfection, but her wholeness. A woman who's made peace with her contradictions is a woman you can't help but respect. She doesn't need the spotlight, because her presence is the light. And the most magnetic women, they're rarely the loudest in the room. They're the ones who learn to sit with their pain until their pain turned into power. As Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And maybe, just maybe, that's what we're all aching for. Not to be adored, but to be aligned. Not to be liked, but to be liberated. Not to impress, but to embody the woman we were always meant to become. So let me ask you, are you living as the woman the world trained you to be, or the one your soul has been whispering toward all along? Pause. Let that question sink in, not just in your mind, but in your bones. Because this isn't about becoming magnetic to others. It's about becoming undeniable to yourself. You don't have to try to be seen when you've already seen yourself. That's where your power begins. Not in how loud you speak, but in how deeply you're rooted. And if you're walking that path of unbecoming, of remembering, of coming home to your truth, then stay with me. Because in this episode, we're going deeper into the silence, into the shadow, into that fierce kind of self-love that no one can take from you. Let the journey begin. Have you ever looked into someone's eyes and felt peace? Not just calm, but that rare, unshakable kind. The kind that doesn't need to prove anything. The kind that comes from within. That is the quiet power of a woman who lives from herself, not her ego. It's subtle, but undeniable. She no longer wakes up asking, "How can I be liked today?" Now she breathes into a deeper question. How can I be true to who I really am? Because one day she realized, living to please is just another form of self-abandonment. The ego wants applause. The self wants truth. The ego says, be the prettiest, be agreeable, be easy to love. But the self whispers, be whole, even if it makes others uncomfortable. And that shift changes everything. She stops needing attention because she's already present. She stops performing because now she simply is. And when a woman lives from that place, you feel it. Not in how she looks, not in how she talks, but in how grounded she is, It's in the way she holds silence without shrinking, the way she says no without guilt, the way she no longer argues to be understood because she already understands herself. Think of Maya Angelou. Think of Frances McDormand. Women who don't bend to the world. They invite the world to rise up and meet them where they stand. No masks, no pretending, no chasing approval. And ironically, that's what makes them magnetic. Because true magnetism isn't about seduction. It's about sovereignty. When you meet a woman like this, you pause. You feel something real. Not charm, but clarity. Not sparkle, but substance. An energy that says, I've walked through fire to become this woman, and I will not shrink to make you comfortable. And here's the beautiful truth. This power isn't reserved for the fearless. It lives in every woman who stops performing for love and starts living in her truth. So let me ask you, where in your life are you still chasing applause? Where are you silencing your truth just to feel accepted? Because every time you trade authenticity for approval, you lose the very self you're here to become. But maybe today, you choose something else. Maybe today you come home to yourself. Because the most powerful women aren't the ones who speak the loudest. They are the ones who've made peace with walking alone until the world catches up to their truth. If that's you, keep going. Because in the next part, we'll dive into what real feminine power looks like and why it's nothing like what the world told you to be. If this spoke to something deep inside you, leave a comment below. What truth are you ready to reclaim? Subscribe for more healing reflection and feminine power. And share this with a woman you know who's quietly becoming her whole self. Because her light might be waiting for this. You want to know what makes a woman truly magnetic. It's not her constant smile. It's that she no longer hides behind one. The most powerful women I've met are not endlessly positive. They are endlessly honest. She has walked into the dark corners of her own heart. Not to destroy what lived there, but to understand it, to reclaim it. Anger, jealousy, grief, shame. All the feelings she was taught to silence, she chose to face. And that choice, it changed everything. Because you can't become whole if you keep abandoning the parts of you that feel unacceptable. She stopped pretending, stopped saying I'm fine when her heart was quietly breaking. Now, she speaks the truth, not to be dramatic, but to be free. She says I'm hurting, without shame. She says I'm afraid, without losing her dignity. And when she does that, she gives others permission to be real too. There's a kind of emotional safety that forms around her, not because she has all the answers, but because she holds space without judgment. You can fall apart in front of her, and she won't flinch, because she knows what sorrow feels like. She's lived there, and she made peace with it. She no longer wears emotional armor, because she's not at war with herself anymore. That's what makes her magnetic. Not her confidence, but her congruence. Not her strength, but her self-acceptance. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Let that sink in. How many times have you repeated the same pattern in love, in friendships, in your self-worth, and wondered why? Until you face the shadow, the rage you suppress, the pain you deny, the voice you silence, you will keep calling your wounds bad luck, when in truth, they're just unhealed maps leading you back home. She did the work. She screamed into pillows. She cried on the floor. She wrote truths in her journal she could barely admit out loud. And no, it didn't happen overnight. But day by day, she stopped running and started returning. Now she walks with quiet strength, not because she never fell, but because she no longer fears falling. And that presence, that realness, it's magnetic in a way no curated perfection will ever be. So here's the question. What part of yourself are you still hiding because you think it's too much to be loved? What shadow are you still rejecting that might hold the key to your softness, your strength, your truth? Because this journey to wholeness isn't about being flawless. It's about being real. And maybe, just maybe, the most powerful version of you is the one who dares to sit with her darkness and whisper, "I'm still worthy." Even here. In the next part, we'll explore how this inner wholeness becomes a quiet force of attraction, not just in love, but in life. There's something magnetic about a woman who doesn't shrink her softness just to be taken seriously, and doesn't dim her strength just to be loved. She walks with both grace and grit, tenderness and power. She doesn't choose one over the other, because now she knows she doesn't have to. A mature woman no longer abandons her femininity to be seen as strong, and she doesn't suppress her strength just to stay feminine. She holds both in sacred tension, and in that balance, she becomes unforgettable. This isn't about gender roles. It's not about labels. It's about energy. The sacred dance between the feminine and the masculine that lives within us all. The feminine flows. She feels. She nurtures. She creates. She surrenders. The masculine holds. He focuses. He protects. He provides. He acts. And when a woman integrates both without rejecting either, something extraordinary happens. She leads, but never through domination. She nurtures, but never at the cost of her identity. She gives, but not from depletion. She receives, but not from dependency. There's a quiet mystery about her. You can't put her in a box because she's learned to live outside of all of them. Think of Michelle Obama. She doesn't fit a role. She transcends it. She speaks with elegance and stands with unshakable presence. She carries warmth, and still she commands a room. That is integration. That is what Carl Jung called the union of opposites. He believed wholeness is not about being just good or kind, just soft or strong. It's about becoming all of who you are. In Jungian psychology, we all carry both the inner feminine anima and the inner masculine animus. And when they begin to dance, not fight, we step into our fullest expression. Some women burn out trying to hustle like men. Others lose themselves trying to soften just to be loved. But the truly magnetic woman, she doesn't pick sides. She chooses integration, and that changes everything. She knows when to be still and when to move, when to listen and when to lead, when to open and when to protect, not because someone told her who to be, but because she's met every part of herself and welcomed it home. So let me ask you, where in your life are you overusing one energy and abandoning the other? Are you so focused on achieving that you've forgotten how to receive? Or so committed to being nice that you've stopped speaking your truth because your power doesn't live in the extremes. It lives in your ability to hold both without collapsing into either. The woman who balances her inner fire and her inner flow. She doesn't need to prove anything. She is the proof. That wholeness is not a destination. It's a home you build within. And when she walks into the world from that place, the world notices. In the next part, we'll explore how this inner wholeness shapes not just how she loves, but who she allows into her life. Have you ever met a woman who radiates meaning? Even before she says a word, you feel it in the way she moves. Grounded, unrushed, in the way she listens, fully present, not performing, in the way she lives, not to impress, but to offer. She doesn't seek love to complete her. She seeks love to share what's already whole. That is a woman who lives with purpose, not from fear, not from emptiness, but from overflow. Whether she's raising children, building a business, teaching quietly in a classroom, or tending to her garden with devotion, she's not distracted. She's devoted. She doesn't need a partner to escape loneliness. She's not searching for someone to fix her or fill her. She's already walking her path, with or without a witness, with or without applause. That doesn't make her disconnected. It makes her rooted. She welcomes love, but she doesn't need it to feel real. Her identity is no longer built on being chosen. It's built on being aligned, and that changes everything. You feel it before she even speaks. Not loud, not flashy, but intentional, present, unmistakable. Her purpose carries more weight than her appearance. She doesn't have to be the prettiest in the room, because she's the one who makes people pause, and wonder, who is she? And what is she anchored in? Because when a woman lives with purpose, she becomes magnetic in a way no trend, title, or tactic can ever match. Think about Malala Yousafzai. She's not chasing popularity. She's not performing for attention. She's devoted to education, to truth, to something greater than herself. And that quiet devotion, it echoes louder than any spotlight ever could. Now maybe you're wondering, but what if I don't know my purpose yet? Here's the truth. Purpose isn't always a job title or a big mission. Sometimes purpose is how you love, how you heal, how you choose presence in a world addicted to noise. It's in the way you raise your voice for something that matters, or the way you offer kindness when no one's watching. It's in the way you keep growing even when no one claps. Purpose is not what makes you worthy. It's what flows through you once you remember you already are. So here's the question only you can answer. Are you living to fill a void or to pour from your fullness? Because the world doesn't need more perfect women. It needs more purposeful ones. And the woman who walks her path with quiet devotion, with courage, with grace, she doesn't chase attention. She becomes direction. In the final part, we'll explore how this kind of inner wholeness transforms, how she loves, connects, and leads without needing to control. You know what's more powerful than being perfect? Being in process and being honest about it. There's a kind of woman who no longer wears perfection as a mask. Instead, she wears growth like a second skin. Each day, she doesn't ask, "Do they like me yet?" She asks something deeper. Am I more honest than I was yesterday? Did I show up more real than I used to hide? She's not chasing some final version of herself to finally feel worthy. She's becoming, moment by moment, breath by breath. And no, it's not always pretty. Some days she stumbles. Some days she contradicts herself. Some days she looks in the mirror and still sees parts she hasn't yet learned to love. But you know what? She doesn't shrink from that. She doesn't pretend she's healed. She doesn't perform her strength. she shares her process. Because she knows authenticity connects more than perfection ever could. She's not trying to be the woman who always gets it right. She's becoming the woman who's brave enough to stay in the room with her becoming. And that changes everything. Carl Jung once said, "Individuation is not about separating from the world. It's about becoming so real that you draw the world toward your truth." And that is exactly what she's doing. She no longer performs for love. She lives from truth, even when that truth is messy, even when it's raw, because it's rare, it's real, and it's deeply relatable. I once heard a woman say, "I stopped trying to be the woman who's loved and started making peace with the one growing inside me." And I never forgot that, because that is what healing really looks like. Not becoming lovable, but remembering you always were. She no longer lives in comparison, no longer chases someone else's timeline. She knows growth is not linear, and every setback, every redirection, every pause is part of the unfolding. So let me ask you, where in your life are you still trying to look perfect instead of letting yourself grow? Where are you editing your truth just to make it more digestible to others? Because perfection is exhausting, but growth is liberating. And when you start choosing progress over performance, when you start letting go of who you should be to meet the woman you're actually becoming, something shifts. You breathe deeper, you laugh louder, you stop trying to impress and start daring to express. That is freedom. That is power. That is beauty, not the kind that fades, the kind that blooms. In our final part, we'll explore how this blooming woman, real, radiant, and rooted, doesn't just change her life. She changes everyone around her. Have you ever met a woman who doesn't rush? She's not chasing a timeline. She's not proving she's ahead. She's simply becoming, not in a race, but in her own rhythm. There's something magnetic about that kind of stillness. While the world scrambles to arrive, she pauses. She breathes. She listens. She feels. She's not afraid of being behind, because she knows depth doesn't bloom overnight. Roots take time. Real growth requires stillness and evolution. It doesn't follow a deadline. It follows surrender. She honors her seasons, her winters of silence, her springs of rebirth, her summers of light, her falls of letting go. She no longer rushes clarity. She makes space for it to come. In a world addicted to urgency, her presence is revolutionary. She doesn't demand attention, but she commands it, not by speaking louder, but by being deeper. You feel it when you're near her, a calm that slows your breath, a steadiness that invites your own truth. She doesn't need to prove. She simply unfolds, not with perfection, but with presence. And that's unforgettable. Because while others chase milestones, she chooses meaning. She's not trying to impress. She's trying to align. Her worth isn't tied to speed. It's rooted in truth. And here's what no one tells you. Your becoming won't look like hers, or your mother's, or your mentor's, or the woman on your screen. It will look like yours. Messy, beautiful, perfectly timed for you. So let me ask, where are you rushing? What was never meant to be rushed? Where are you forcing instead of allowing? You don't need to be further ahead. You need to be deeper within. Your truth. It's not late. Your healing. It's not wrong. Your timing. It's not broken. It's just unfolding. slowly, quietly, powerfully, and maybe the most courageous thing you can do right now is to stop trying to become her and start honoring the woman you already are, the one who's listening, the one who's healing, the one who's still learning to stay soft in a world that tells her to hurry, to harden, to hide. She's not in a hurry anymore. And that's what makes her magnetic. Not her pace, but her presence. In our closing part, we'll gather every truth we've uncovered and remember what it means to live whole, not rushed, but rooted. Have you ever met a woman who no longer fears being alone? She doesn't fill the silence with noise. She doesn't chase someone to fill the void. She doesn't beg to be chosen, kept, or saved, because she has finally chosen herself. And in that moment, loneliness stops feeling like punishment. It becomes sanctuary, a sacred stillness where she can sit with her soul, with her truth, with no need to hide. Solitude is no longer emptiness. It becomes communion, with her own breath, with a deeper rhythm, with the parts of herself she used to forget. She's no longer afraid of quiet, because it's in the silence that she hears her clearest voice. And in a world terrified of stillness, terrified of being unattached, she becomes a kind of refuge. She doesn't need to perform to be loved. She doesn't have to be agreeable, sweet, or easy to be with. She just has to be real. And here's the paradox. The moment she stops needing love to feel worthy is when she becomes the most lovable. Because she no longer loves to possess. She loves to share. She no longer connects from lack. She connects from overflow. She's not dependent on love. But when love comes, it must rise to meet her stillness. She's not looking for someone to save her. She's looking for someone who can walk beside her without breaking her rhythm. Let me ask you something gently. Have you ever loved out of loneliness or out of wholeness? Do you fear your own silence, or have you learned to sit quietly with your own heart? Because here's the truth. No one wants to say, if you can't be fully with yourself, you'll never truly be present with anyone else. And when a woman stops dividing herself just to be loved, when she chooses solitude over staying in the wrong connection, she becomes magnetic. Not because she needs to be kept, but because her freedom is so radiant, it can't be ignored. So if you're walking through a season of stillness, if the world feels quiet, if your arms are empty, but your soul is full, know this: you are not behind. You are becoming. And this quiet might just be the place where your truest power takes root. In our final part, we'll bring all these pieces together to remember that feminine wholeness isn't a performance. It's a homecoming. There's a kind of voice that doesn't aim to impress. It doesn't chase applause. It awakens. It doesn't speak to fill silence. It speaks to reveal truth. And when she speaks, you feel it. It's not rehearsed. It's not polished. It's not content crafted for attention. It's truth, lived, felt, survived. Her voice doesn't perform. It pierces. It pauses you. It lands deep. She doesn't overshare. She doesn't explain herself to be understood. She speaks only when her soul has something to say. And when it doesn't, she remains quiet. Because she's not here to fill space. She's here to honor it. And strangely enough, that's why people lean in. Not because she's loud, but because every word carries weight. Not the weight of ego, but of soul. She doesn't try to dominate a room. Her presence is already the message. You've probably met a woman like this. When she speaks, people stop, not out of curiosity, but because something real inside them recognizes something real inside her. And here's what's powerful. She doesn't need to be a great speaker. She just needs to be honest about her experience, because the world is full of noise, but starving for truth. We don't need more polished voices. We need more lived voices. Voices that have sat with grief, held tenderness, stayed silent when silence was sacred. So ask yourself, are you speaking because you truly have something to say, or because you're afraid of being invisible if you don't? Are you pushing words out of pressure or allowing silence to speak when needed? Because sometimes it's not what you say that makes people listen. It's the life you've lived behind the words. The woman who speaks from depth doesn't need to be remembered. She simply speaks the truth, and the truth remembers her. In our final chapter, we'll bring this journey home, reminding ourselves that real magnetism isn't about how we look, but how deeply we choose to live. Have you ever met a woman who didn't try to stand out, and yet you couldn't stop noticing her? She didn't raise her voice. She didn't chase attention. She simply was. And in that quiet presence, she became unforgettable. Because her power wasn't in what she wore, or how she moved, or how much she glowed. It was in who she had become. She didn't chase the light. She became it. Not the kind that blinds, but the kind that warms, the kind that steadies, the kind that says, I've been through the dark, and I didn't abandon myself there. She no longer walks to be seen. She walks with intention. And if love meets her along the way, it will walk beside her, not lead her away from herself. She doesn't wear healing like a costume. She doesn't post affirmations to feel worthy. She doesn't perform her growth. She lives it, softly, slowly, honestly. She no longer tries to shine bright, because true light, it doesn't need to prove anything. It just is. You see, this woman has sat in the dark. She's faced the ache, the silence, the empty nights. She didn't escape it. She didn't rush through it. She stayed. And from that stillness, a quiet glow began to rise, not to impress, not to fix others, but to remind them, you have this light too. She became a mirror, reflecting back what the world forgot: peace, depth, the kind of radiance that whispers instead of shouts. You don't see her fighting to be the light, because she's already become it, in the way she breathes, in the way she listens, in the way she simply remains. Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens." And she did. She stopped waiting for permission. She stopped asking to be seen, because she finally saw herself. She lit the candle within, before ever trying to light the world. And so I ask you gently, are you chasing the spotlight, or are you slowly becoming the flame? Are you trying to be noticed, or are you learning to belong to yourself? Because in the end, the most magnetic women aren't the ones who scream to be seen. They're the ones who dared to face their shadows and still chose to love. In our closing, we'll bring everything together and remember this simple truth. Wholeness was never about becoming perfect. It was always about coming home to you. If you take one thing with you from this journey, let it be this. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be honest. You don't need a plan, or a title, or permission. You don't even need to be fully ready. You just need to stop turning away from yourself. Stop running. Stop shrinking. Stop pretending you're not enough. And start returning. One breath at a time. One brave moment at a time. One honest whisper to the part of you that's still afraid. Because no one becomes light just by wishing for it. We become light by walking into the dark and staying long enough to find the fire inside. Not because someone came to rescue us, but because we stopped abandoning ourselves. The women you admire, they're not chasing attention. They're not performing worth. They're simply coming home. And you can too. You don't need a big transformation. You don't need to reinvent your life. Sometimes, healing begins with a quiet moment. I'm tired of proving. I'm ready to return. Maybe it's letting yourself cry, or finally saying no without guilt. Maybe it's sitting in silence without trying to fix a thing. And in that quiet place, something soft begins to bloom. The woman you're becoming. She's not somewhere far. She's waiting, just on the other side of fear, of the mask, of the question, am I enough? Here's the answer. You've always been enough. You just forgot. And this journey home, it doesn't need to be loud. It only needs to be real. Because every time a woman stops and chooses herself, she doesn't just heal her own life. She becomes a light for every other woman who's been waiting to do the same. So let me ask you gently, will you begin not when it's perfect, but now, from where you are, with all your mess and all your magic? Because this sacred becoming, this soft return, it's been waiting for you all along. And if you've been looking for a sign, this is it.